Why did prophets always talk to God on mountains? Have you ever thought about this? Moses on a mountain, Jesus on a mountain, Muhammad on a mountain. Why not in the city square? Why not in the village cafe? Why not somewhere everyone could see? Always mountains, always solitude, always no witnesses. Moses went up Mount Sinai, stayed 40 days and 40 nights. What happened there? God spoke, gave the 10 Commandments, written on stone tablets. Who saw it? Nobody. Moses came down, said, God told me this. Proof? None. He said, believe me. People believed. Why? Because Moses said so. Jesus went up the mountain, the Mount of Temptation, fasted for 40 days. Satan came, tested him. Jesus resisted. Who saw it? Nobody. Jesus came down, said, I fought Satan. Proof? None. He said, believe me. Muhammad went up to the cave of Hira, on Mount Nur. Gabriel came, said, read. Muhammad read. The first verse came down. Who saw it? Nobody. Muhammad came down, said the angel came. Proof? None. He said, believe me. All 3 religions. Same story. Mountain, solitude, God speaking, but nobody watching. Why? Because if there were witnesses, they would ask questions. They would say, but we didn't see. They would say, but we didn't hear. But on the mountain, nobody's there. Only the prophet. Whatever he says is accepted as truth. According to psychology, hallucinations are normal in isolated people. You stay alone for 40 days. You go hungry. You go thirsty. Your sleep pattern breaks down. The brain starts seeing strange things. You hear voices. You see lights. This is hallucination, not real, a product of the brain. But 2,000 years ago, nobody knew this. People thought if someone stays on a mountain for 40 days and hears voices, it must be God's voice. There was no other explanation. No psychology, no neurology, only religion. Now think, what would happen if Moses said, God spoke to me in the city square? People would say, we didn't hear. They would say, show us. Moses couldn't show, because there's nothing to show. But on the mountain, nobody's there. Whatever Moses says is believed. What would happen if Jesus said, I fought Satan in the city? People would say, where? Show us. Jesus couldn't show. But on the mountain, nobody's there. Whatever Jesus says is believed. What would happen if Muhammad said Gabriel came in the middle of Mecca? People would say, we didn't see. Muhammad couldn't show. But on the mountain, nobody's there. Whatever Muhammad says is believed. The mountain is a strategic choice. Witness-free environment. Controllable story. Nobody can deny it because nobody was there. So why 40 days? Why always 40? Moses 40 days. Jesus 40 days. Noah's flood 40 days. Israelites 40 years in the desert. Always 40. Why? Because 40 is a symbolic number. In ancient cultures, 40 means completion, maturity, change. Not a real number. A symbolic number. Means a long time. But religions tell it like a real number. Now another question. Why does God always talk to one person? Why not talk collectively? If God really wants to give a universal message, why give it to one person? Why not give it to everyone at once? The answer is simple. Because giving it to one person is controllable. Whatever that person says is true. But if you gave it to thousands of people, everyone would hear something different. It would be chaos. But if there's one person, that person has a monopoly. Whatever that person says becomes religion. Moses came down from the mountain, said, God said this. People said we didn't hear. Moses said, because he only told me. Why only you? Because I was chosen. Who chose you? God. How do we know? I'm telling you. Loop closed. Muhammad came down from Hira, said, Gabriel came. People said we didn't see. Muhammad said, because he only came to me. Why only you? Because I'm the prophet. Who said so? Gabriel. How do we know? I'm telling you. Loop closed. Every prophet, same story. I went alone. God spoke. Only I heard. Believe me. And people believed. Why? Because back then there was no science, no psychology. People believed in the supernatural. Every strange event was considered a miracle. But today we know. Solitude leads to hallucination. Hunger leads to hallucination. Thirst leads to hallucination. Sleep deprivation leads to hallucination. These are all scientific facts. And prophets experienced all of these on the mountain. 40 days alone. Hungry, thirsty, sleepless. Brain breaking down. Hearing voices. Seeing lights. There are desert mystics. Christian monks. They go to the desert. Stay alone. Like Jesus. What happens? They see hallucinations. They think God is speaking. They say they see angels. But this isn't real. Brain tricks. There are Indian yogis. They climb the Himalayan mountains. Stay alone. Fast. What happens? They see hallucinations. They say they see gods. They say Vishnu appeared. But this isn't real. Brain tricks. There are shamans. In Siberian mountains. Stay alone. Suffer hunger. Sometimes use drugs. What happens? They see hallucinations. They say they talk to spirits, but this isn't real. Brain tricks, all the same. Solitude, hunger, thirst, result, hallucination. But interpretation differs by culture. Christian sees Jesus. Muslim sees Gabriel. Hindu sees Vishnu. Shaman sees spirits. Same brain mechanism. Different cultural labels. Now think, what would happen if Moses climbed Mount Sinai today? He'd go to a psychiatrist. Doctor would say, "You're having hallucinations. Give medication." Moses returns to normal. No religion formed. But 3,000 years ago, no psychiatry. People believe in the supernatural. Moses comes down, says God spoke. People say, wow, miracle. Religion is born. There's also this. Mountains were considered sacred. Why? Because they're high, close to the sky. God is in the sky. Mountain is close to the sky. So on a mountain you're closer to God. Sounds logical, but it's not. Because if God is everywhere, why would he be closer on a mountain? But people thought that way. Mountains are special. Miracles happen on mountains. Greek mythology. Where do the gods live? Mount Olympus. Why? Because the mountain is high, close to the sky. Hindu mythology. Where are the gods? Mount Meru. Why? Because the mountain is sacred. Every culture the same. Mountains are sacred. Gods are on mountains. Prophets go up mountains. Talk to God. But the truth is, mountains are just high places. God isn't on mountains. God isn't anywhere because there's no proof. Now let's look from another angle. Why don't prophets go in groups? Why alone? Because if they went in a group, there would be witnesses. Someone would say, I didn't see. Someone would say, I didn't hear. Inconsistencies would emerge. But when you go alone, whatever you say is true. What would happen if Moses took someone with him? That person could say, I didn't see God. But Moses went alone, came down alone. Whatever he said, everyone believed. What would happen if Muhammad took Abu Bakr with him? Abu Bakr could say, I didn't see the angel, but Muhammad went alone, came back alone. Whatever he said was believed. Strategic isolation, no witnesses, control. The story shapes however you want. Nobody can deny it. There's also timing. Always night, always dark. Moses at night on the mountain. Jesus at night on the mountain. Muhammad at night in the cave. Why night? Because night is mysterious. Night is scary. Night makes hallucination easier. There are light tricks. There are shadows. Sounds echo. The brain is easier to fool. What if it was daytime? Everything clear, sharp, hallucination harder. But at night everything's dark, uncertain. Imagination works. You say God came, it's believed. Now religions say God appears at special times in special places. Why special? Why can't everyone see? Because there are chosen people. Why chosen? Because God wanted it that way. Proof? It's written in the book. Who wrote it? The chosen person. Loop. Logic doesn't work, but people don't question. There's faith. Faith kills questioning. Now let's look at modern times. What happens if someone today says, I went up a mountain, God spoke? People laugh. Say he's crazy. Take him to a psychiatrist. But 2,000 years ago, if you said the same thing, you'd start a religion. Why? Because back then, no science. Today, there's science. What happens if someone today says, I saw an angel? People say, prove it. Take a camera. Take video. Show proof. But there's no proof. Because there's no angel. There's hallucination. But 1,400 years ago, no camera. No video. Someone says, I saw an angel. People believe. Religion starts. If there was no technology, new religions would still be forming today. But there's technology. There's camera. There's recording. Fake prophets are caught immediately, but old prophets weren't caught because there was no technology. Think, what would happen if Moses had a camera? If he filmed God, if he filmed the 10 Commandments being written, he'd show it. There'd be proof, but no camera, only words. Believe me. What would happen if Muhammad filmed Gabriel? There'd be proof. The debate would end, but no camera, only words. Believe me. So why doesn't God come today? Why no new prophet in the last 1,400 years? Islam says Muhammad is the last prophet. Christianity says Jesus is the last prophet. Why last? Because it's written in the book. Who wrote it? The prophet. Why do we believe him? Because he's the prophet. How do we know? Because it's written in the book. Loop. The truth is, no new prophet because it doesn't work anymore. People are more educated. There's science. If someone says God spoke, nobody believes. That's why religions say last prophet, because a new prophet can't be marketed anymore. Now something else. Why are prophets always male? Why no female prophets? Because back then women weren't considered authority. If a woman said God spoke, nobody would believe. They'd say, you're a woman, be quiet. But when a man says it, it's believed. If someone today asks, why no female prophet? What do religions say? God wanted it that way. Why did he want it that way? We can't know. Is this an answer? No. Evasion. The truth is, no female prophet because that era was patriarchal. Women had no voice. There's Mary, Jesus' mother. Important? Yes. But prophet? No. Why? Because woman. There's Fatima, Muhammad's daughter. Important? Yes. But prophet? No. Why? Because woman. Religions exclude women. Authority is male. God is male. Prophet is male. Priest is male. Imam is male. Where's the woman? At home. Silent. Obedient. Now let's go back to mountains. Mountains are symbolic. Height is symbolic. Solitude is symbolic. But people think it's real. Yes, Moses really talked to God. Proof? None. But it's written in the book. Who wrote it? People. But God inspired them. How do you know? I believe. Faith is not proof. Faith is feeling. Feeling changes. Changes according to culture. Christian believes in Jesus. Muslim believes in Muhammad. Hindu believes in Krishna. Everyone says I'm right, but they can't all be right at the same time, because they contradict each other. So who's right? None of them, because all use the same mechanism. Mountain, solitude, hallucination, story, faith, religion. What does science say? Science says hallucination is real. In isolated environments, the brain produces images, hears sounds. But this isn't God, it's brain chemistry. There's a substance called DMT. The brain produces it. Natural drug. Released when dreaming. Released in near-death experiences and causes severe hallucination. People see entities, see lights, hear sounds. Old prophets on mountains experiencing prolonged hunger, thirst, stress. Brain releases DMT. They see hallucinations. But back then, no knowledge of DMT. They think this must be God. Today we know. DMT is hallucination. No God. There's brain chemistry. But religions don't accept this. Because if they accept it, religion collapses. You can't say our prophet had hallucinations. Religion ends. So they deny, reject science. Now I ask you, what would happen if prophets lived today? They'd go to psychiatrists, get treatment, live normally. No religion would be formed. But 2,000 years ago, no psychiatry, no treatment. Person seeing hallucinations is either considered crazy or a prophet. Moses was lucky, considered a prophet. Someone else might have been considered crazy, killed. History is written by winners. Moses won, convinced people, became prophet. But how many people tried the same thing and were considered crazy? How many said God spoke and were stoned? We don't know. History only tells about winners. Muhammad won, convinced people, became prophet. But how many people tried the same thing and were killed? There was someone named Musaylima, same period, said, I'm also a prophet, was killed. History calls him a false prophet. Why? Because he lost. Muhammad won. Who wins? That one's the prophet. Who loses? That one's the fraud. But both doing the same thing. Both saying God spoke. The difference is only who won. Conclusion. Mountains are strategic choice. Witness-free environment. Ideal for hallucination. Story control easy. People don't question. Faith begins. Religion is born. Today we know. No God on mountains. There's hallucination. There's brain chemistry. There's cultural interpretation. But people still believe. Why? Because taught as children, didn't question, blindly accepted. What if we questioned? What if we asked why always on mountains? What if we asked why always alone? What if we asked why never witnesses? We wouldn't find answers, because there are no logical answers. But we don't ask, we believe, and religion continues.